Well, hello again, everybody. Due to the insane amount of messages and questions and things we've gotten today, I figured I'd do another live when I have a little more time to try and touch on some of the topics that were mentioned in the comments on my last live. First of all, I want to clarify the plan that I mentioned in order to remove Jason Kenney and any MLAs that are effectively standing in the way of Albertans living their lives as free people. So I'll give you guys a little bit of an introduction as to how the political party system works. We have the two main levels of government that we're dealing with right now are federal and provincial. Federally, we have the NDP party, the Liberal Party, the Progressive Conservative Party, we have the Maverick Party, and the People's Party. So those are all federal parties. We elect MPs to represent us in the House of Commons in Ottawa on a federal level. In Alberta, we have the United Conservative Party, the NDPs, the Liberal Party of Alberta. We have the Buffalo Party, the Alberta Independence Party, the Alberta Advantage Party, the Wild Rose Independence Party, and who am I missing? There's one more. It's a small party. I can't remember what it's called, but anyway, that's what we have. In those parties, we elect MLAs, members of the Legislative Assembly, that represent us on a provincial level. Now, if you guys want to know what is covered federally and provincially, you can find that information online. It's also written into the Constitution as to what the different levels of government are responsible for. So my main focus right now is our representation within Alberta. So those are the provincial parties that I mentioned, and those are our MLAs. Each riding or constituency in Alberta, each party has a constituency association. Now, these are groups of people that they listen to input from the people in those constituency. For example, I am in the Lacombe-Panoka CA. All the parties have a constituency association, and they're made up of a board of a certain number of people. They're not all the same. And that board decides what messaging that CA wants to send to the Legislative Assembly on our behalf. So, what I had said is, if the constituency association board members vote, they need a 50% plus one in order to table a motion to do a leadership review or recall of an MLA. Now, you might be wondering why this hasn't happened. Part of the reason is because our Premier, Jason Kenney, he actually has, I think, 9 staffers that work for him that sit on multiple CAs across Alberta, and they're allowed to do so according to the UCP bylaws. Now, the beautiful thing about that for Kenney is that a lot of people don't generally get involved with politics. People are all excited around election time. They sit on the CA boards, and they feel like they're doing something, and then that kind of peters off, and they just stop going to meetings. But Jason Kenney still sends his 9 staff members to vote on different topics within those board meetings. So if you have a CA that has only 10 people on the board, and Jason Kenney sends even 6 of his staffers, they can completely override what that CA wants to see their MLA represent within caucus or the Legislative Assembly. Now, there are some CAs in Alberta that are completely dominated by Jason Kenney's staff. And the way to overcome that was the second point that I talked about, and that was what I said about 100 UCP members can ask for a special meeting of the CA, and the topic of that meeting can be replacing the board. So if the board is dominated by Kenney's staffers doing Kenney's will, we can force a meeting and replace that board with people who actually want to speak for the members of their CA. So it's not like 100 members across Alberta can trigger this. It's 100 members in that CA can trigger a meeting and replace the board with people who will vote in favor of a leadership review or recalling their MLA. So if your MLA isn't doing his or her job, put the pressure on them. Let them know what your intentions are. They've already received letters and warnings saying that if they're not going to represent Albertans, and Albertans first, and not their own interests or the Premier's interests, that we're going to remove them. And that's going to be up to the people in all the different CAs. It's pretty hard to have effective representation within government when the leader of the party sends his own people in to act as our representatives, but they're not. Their goal is to toe the line for the Premier and ensure that his leadership remains intact. But it's not going to work if enough of us get involved. So I hope that clarifies my my earlier thoughts on how to remove the Premier from office. The second question I've had is, what's the point of removing the Premier? Well, that sends a very, very powerful message to the party. That sends a message that if you are not going to represent Albertans, then your job's on the line, so you best start listening. Another question I got was regarding the current caseload and hospitalizations due to or of people who may or may not be infected with COVID. Apparently 75% of the people that are in the hospital, or 70% or something like that, are unvaccinated, which means there are still 30% of those people who are vaccinated. According to the statistics, the double jabbed folks in the hospital outnumber the single jabbed folks 10 to 1 or something like that. You can look into the stat yourself. Please don't take my word for it. The information's all available online. But here's my question. Throughout this whole thing, we've heard it all. We heard 2 weeks to flatten the curve. We heard 6 weeks to flatten the curve. We heard we don't know how long it's going to take to flatten the curve, but we have to flatten the curve. We've heard we have to mask. We've heard we have to social distance. We've heard we have to destroy our businesses and our lives. We've heard that we have to lock up our grandparents and our elderly in retirement homes and force them to die alone because we need to flatten the curve. We have heard everything. And it's always been, you just have to do this, or you just have to do that. And now we just have to do something else. We reached the 75% vaccination threshold a couple months ago, and that was supposed to effectively end the restrictions and end COVID. It didn't. And we tried to say this before, we said this right from the beginning, that this isn't going to end. And the reason it isn't going to end is because this is along the same lines as the flu or the cold. We can't get rid of it. It's an upper respiratory infection, and it doesn't go away. It never goes away. It changes and comes back all the time. We've seen this with how many new variants? They're always a variant of concern or a scary new variant or something along those lines. Now we're being told that we have to basically shame or force people into getting vaccinated to get rid of these restrictions. It didn't work. It's not going to work. There's doctors out there that are saying the exact same thing. This is where I get my information from. And I just want to know, for those of you who keep saying, you just have to do that, you just have to do this, you just have to do that, get off the fence, go get vaccinated. What exactly do you think that's going to accomplish? These are the same people that were saying that we need to do our part to help the doctors and nurses that are taking care of us throughout this pandemic. And now these people are saying these doctors and nurses just have to do their part. They just have to get vaccinated and this will all be over. Well, I'm sorry, but it's not working. The vast majority of Alberta is vaccinated. I think at last number, I think 78% is single vaccinated, 69% or something like that is double. And now we're getting into the triples. Because, just as we said before, there will be booster shots all the time. And it's going to be, you just have to do this, you just have to do that, or else we're going to lock you up again. Well, I'm sorry, but that doesn't work for me and for hundreds of thousands of other people across Canada. And it certainly doesn't work for me where the government is trying to shame people into doing something with their bodies that they don't want to do, to suit their agenda or whatever, and it doesn't work. They're lying. They know it doesn't work. If it did, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Those 79% of people that got vaccinated we would have reached enough immunity that we wouldn't be dealing with the high number of active caseloads across the province. Now, I don't know about you, but I also have a problem with this case number being thrown around out there like it means something. Do any of you realize that the cases that they keep talking about, the highest case count since May or whatever, most of those people, pardon me, let me back up, I don't know that for sure. A good majority of those people don't even know they have COVID. They know because at some point they were tested and the test came back saying that they have COVID. But they're not sick. It is not a case. It's a yes, they're infected with COVID, but it's not a case. They don't present with any symptoms. They're fine. They go about their daily lives. We still have people in the hospital with COVID. COVID still kills people who have an average of over 2 comorbidities. I'm sure there are some that don't have that many, but that's the average. Nothing has changed. The masking, the destruction of businesses, the vaccination campaign hasn't changed anything. So how much more do we just have to do before people wake up and realize that, just like some of the doctors in the very beginning said, this is something we have to live with. We don't have to destroy people's lives and businesses to try and get rid of something that we can't get rid of. Yes, people will die. It sucks. People will die. They always die. If it's not COVID, it would have been the flu or pneumonia or something like that. And it feels bad even to say that. Death is never a pretty thing, but it is going to happen, regardless of what we do. We cannot save ourselves from nature. It doesn't work. And we certainly can't do it by restricting ourselves into oblivion. So this whole timeline with all these things that we just have to do, it's been stretched on for, 2 years now? And we are still in the exact same spot we were before. And I guarantee you, if we don't do something soon, we're going to be looking at further lockdowns come, in the next 2 weeks or the next 3 weeks. So, do you want to live like this, or do you want to get back to normal? It's really your choice. I choose getting back to normal. I choose being responsible for my own health and not having the government be my parents. For those of you who are saying, well, I have a friend who's super sick and if they get COVID, they'll die. That sucks. If you want to do your part and keep your friend safe, then you could isolate yourself from them. You could maybe bring them groceries or something like that so they don't have to go out. But don't tell me that I have to shut down my business, or pardon me, nobody's told me I have to shut down my business yet. Don't tell a bar in Edmonton or Calgary that they have to lose their business and not serve liquor after 10, that's when they sell the most liquor, to keep your friends safe. You can do that without the government telling you to. Nobody has to tell you to do that. You're more than welcome to do it. If you want to wear a mask when you go out grocery shopping so that I don't know why you would want to do that, but if you feel that makes you safe, which they say it doesn't, or maybe it's going to make someone else safer, go ahead and do it. But stop telling other people that they have to do the same thing as you to keep these people safe. There are other ways to do it besides destroying people's lives. This time I actually wrote some stuff down because I keep forgetting what all the comments are. Dr. Hinshaw said a few weeks ago that COVID is like the flu. It's never going away. We're just going to have to live with it. She got that right. She absolutely did. What they're not getting right now is sticking to their guns. They knew this was going to happen right from the beginning. I still think this was a plan that was designed to allow some of these big money-producing events to go on, like the Calgary Stampede. They knew there was going to be a climbing case count. They said this stuff anyway. Hold them to account. Make them do what they said they were going to do. And if they don't want to do it, then fire them. Get involved. Talk to the CA board members in your constituency and make your voice heard. Protest. Do whatever you got to do. Like I said, there's going to be protests in front of all of the MLA's office in the coming weeks. So why don't you go to one of those? That's a great way to have your voice heard. It's not just bars right now they're going to suffer from these new mandates. It's people associated with bars. It's their food suppliers, their staff, people that do music there, musicians for sure are going to be severely affected by this. And we're talking about people that have had a really rough go in the past 2 years because nobody would book them. They were scared to do anything, not the musicians, or some of them, but the bar owners and the restaurant owners, they just weren't booking these people, and their lives have been seriously harmed throughout this entire thing. It's not just a bar owner, it's everybody. Maybe it's the guy or girl that owns the building the bar is in that hasn't got rent in 6 months because of COVID. It doesn't stop just with that business. There are dozens of people that are associated with all of these businesses that are going to be affected as well. So speaking of restrictions, there are some places right now, everywhere in the province apparently, are forcing their patrons to wear masks. Now I want to remind everybody out there that there are some people that actually cannot wear a mask. They have legitimate medical reasons why they can't. They're being discriminated against. There's businesses out there that are saying, we don't care about your disability. You have to do what we say or you can't patronize our business. Now, would you say that to somebody in a wheelchair? That person has a visible disability. It's a lot harder to discriminate against them, but we have businesses doing that right now. They're treating perfectly healthy people with a disability, i.e. they can't wear a mask. They're treating them as some infectious walking disease that can't patronize their business because they can't wear a mask that will do little to nothing to protect anybody, let alone themselves. Are you okay with that kind of discrimination? I'm not. Not at all. And the government's allowing it. As a matter of fact, the government is looking into the legalities of businesses forcing things on their employees and patrons. They're not looking into protecting people's rights. They're looking into the legality of allowing discriminatory restrictions. And that really says something about our current government. So, hospital numbers. I've been watching this really closely over the last couple weeks. I could see an upward trend, just like all of you probably could. But there is some information missing out of the numbers that we're being given. They're giving us numbers about how many people are in the hospital with COVID. They're giving us numbers about how many deaths are attributed to COVID. Now, they don't tell us if those deaths, if the person had stage 4 lung cancer. They don't tell us if that person had heart disease or severe diabetes or anything like that. They just say deaths attributed to COVID. We are not getting all of the information. And some of you out there are using these big scary numbers as a way to shame other people into doing what you want them to do because you think it's going to make you or someone else safe. That is virtue signaling of the highest order. We see right through it. If you really want to throw these numbers around, I think you better start asking for some more information, because what you're getting in the newspaper isn't the whole story. They're telling us that 80% or something like that of the people, or 70% of the people in the hospital with COVID are unvaccinated. Did they tell you that they're not testing people that are vaccinated for COVID? Because that's a thing. Again, don't take my word for it. Dig up the information yourself. It's available. Ask why they're not testing all of the people that end up in the hospital who are double vaccinated. Why are they not testing them for COVID? They're in the hospital dying of other things that aren't necessarily COVID. They're not attributing those deaths or those ICU admissions to COVID because they're doubly vaccinated. But they're doing that with people who aren't vaccinated. It doesn't make any sense, it skews the numbers, and it makes people scared. I've heard people say or comment online about my fear-mongering. The only thing I fear is a government that doesn't give us all the information and tells us what we have to do under threat of imprisonment, and without the data and justification to back it up. I fear a government that has to bribe people to do something that they don't want to do, because if this was such a big deal, do you not think that everybody out there would be clamoring for a vaccine? If it was really this dangerous, wouldn't they be? If it was really this dangerous, why are places like the Pinoca, the chuck wagon races, and some of these big events, why are they getting exemptions? Did you know that? This is so dangerous that a bar can't serve liquor after 10 p.m., but a big event can get an exemption from the restrictions because they're making money for the province. How does that make sense? That should open some people's eyes. When it becomes about money or an organization that has a lot of power to influence people in the government, all of a sudden there's exemptions because, oh, well, it's not that dangerous. And it's in Albertans' best interest to allow this. Open your eyes. Everybody that's watching this right now, you all know that I've had some altercations and some confrontations with AHS. I've said in some of my live streams before that my ultimate goal is to castrate AHS and remove their ability to restrict us or take away our rights or infringe on our rights in any way without prior justification. I've said that. Obviously, I'm not a huge fan of some parts of AHS. Now what I'm seeing is the government is actually allowing AHS employees who have worked hard for us throughout this whole thing. These are people that are generally overworked, generally underpaid. They're probably one of the most important jobs we have in Alberta, and that is keeping us healthy and helping us when we're sick. And now it's okay to tell them that they're going to get fired because they don't agree with taking or doing something to their body that they don't want to. So even those who really opposed me and what I was doing in the beginning are now starting to come around, and they're realizing that the government sees them as disposable as well. These people worked hard for us. They still work hard for us. And now they're going to get fired. They're not going to have a job. And that brings up another question. If Dr. Hinshaw and Minister Shandro and Jason Kenney actually cared about the health of Albertans, why would they be allowing AHS to potentially fire up to 30% of their staff when they're already understaffed? What do you think that's going to do for the health and wellness of Albertans? If 30% of our healthcare professionals are gone because they don't want to put something in their body, that tells a big story as well. That should open some people's eyes. It certainly has opened some AHS employees' eyes. We need to stand up for them. We need to stand up for our neighbors. We need to do what we can to protect the vulnerable, which doesn't necessarily have to include destroying our lives or our businesses. We also have to stand up for those elderly people that are locked away in nursing homes or long-term care facilities, not able to see their families in their last days. Who asked them? Who is speaking for them and telling them that they can't make the decision whether they catch COVID because they spent time with their loved ones? That's a horrible thing to do, and that's why I keep saying this should be up to us to decide. It should be up to all of those people that are being locked away and told you can't see your family because it's for your safety. Well, maybe some of those people would rather have 3 or 6 months less, or a shorter life, and be able to spend those days with their family, with their loved ones. Maybe they would prefer that to being locked in a cell for however many hours a day and never seeing them. It's ridiculous. We need to stand up for these people. We need to stand up for each other. We need to get past our differences on whether or not we're vaccinated, and we need to stick together and fight for what's right. Now, another thing that's come up about fighting for what's right is the federal election. I see a lot of people on my streams that are saying vote PPC or vote UPC, or pardon me, CPC or PPC or whatever, vote Maverick to end this. We may have some hope in a federal election. I don't know. It seems that Trudeau is hated everywhere he goes, and rightfully so. The guy's a Trudeau. There's a lot of people who have been asking me who I'm going to vote for in this federal election, and I'm going to take a moment. I'm actually going to tell you. I wasn't going to, but I'm going to tell you who I'm going to vote for, and I'll tell you why. First, I'll tell you why. As many of you are aware, I'm not a separatist, but I am absolutely 100% open to the idea of using a separation referendum as a stick so that the federal government gives Alberta a fair shake. I have no problem with that. If the people of Alberta voted and they wanted to separate from Canada and form their own nation, I would be 100% for that. If they don't, then the people of Alberta have spoken, and that's the way it is. Federally, my vote will go to a party that stands up for Canadians, treats each province fairly, and does what may not be, what's the word? It may not be the most popular thing to do on a globalist scale, but when it comes to the people of Canada and their future and their prosperity, I'll vote for a party that's going to uphold those values. And for me, right now, that's the PPC. Originally, I was going to endorse the CPC because I don't want to split the vote and end up with another Liberal government. I certainly don't want a Liberal NDP coalition. That would be an absolute disaster. But what I would like to see is a CPC-PPC coalition. Because as far as I'm concerned, the Federal Conservative Party, the CPC, they're no different than the Liberals. They're just slower at the game than they are. They talk a good game, but at the end of the day, they don't really do anything different. And right now, in this country and in this province, we need something different. The reason I've chosen not to endorse the Maverick Party, I do believe that they have some outstanding, their platform is outstanding for representing the West. But as a Canadian, which I still am, my vote will go to the party who will represent everybody in Canada fairly. Now, I don't agree with the East getting better representation than the West. I wouldn't agree with the West getting better representation than the East. I think that if we're going to stay as a country, we need to all be treated fairly and equally. So unfortunately at this time, the Maverick Party, they have some great ideas and some great things to say about protecting the Western provinces, but I can't in good conscience get behind a party that is specifically designed to support the West provinces and not the East. Whether we like it or not, the people in the East, they are our neighbors and brothers and sisters in Canada, and I believe that regardless of the deal that we've got here in the West over the last 100 years, I do believe that they deserve to get treated equally as well. So, I think that's PPC, yeah, that's the one, yeah. I think that's about all I had to talk about. I really hope that I clarified the plan that I had about removing Kenney from office. And again, just to recap, no, I don't think that that's going to change anything overnight. I think it's going to send a message. I think it's going to wake up some MLAs. Those MLAs that aren't representing us, they need to know that their jobs are on the line. They need to take a stand. They need to pick a side. They need to be on the side of freedom and prosperity for Alberta, or they have to be on the side of oppression and tyranny like the Premier wants right now. I hope they would choose the former rather than the latter. And, as I mentioned before, it only takes 4 MLAs to sit as independents or cross the floor to form an instant party. Maybe, just maybe, there's something in the works where there is a party or a party in creation with policies and bylaws that don't allow the kind of stuff that's happening in our government right now. Just maybe there's somewhere for all these MLAs to go where they can effectively govern Alberta based on democracy with freedom and rights as the fundamental principles. Just maybe. So stay tuned for that one. That's going to be a big thing. Anyway, I've got things to do. I'm sure you do too. We have a big car show to prepare for tomorrow. Tomorrow, yeah, it's going to be tomorrow. So we have a car show to prepare for tomorrow. And we also have a rally to prepare for next weekend. September 11th, mark it on your calendars, right here at the Whistle Stop Cafe. We're having another protest, another rally. We're going to have some guest speakers, and we want to get as many people together as we can to hear the message of hope and unity and freedom that we all so desperately need right now. And yeah, we're hoping it's going to be a good one. So anyway, Chris from the Whistle Stop Cafe in Mirror, Alberta. Thank you all, and have a great night. Oh, and to our friends and neighbors on the East Coast and the Eastern provinces, thank you for your support. There's been a lot of you who have said things like, we need you in Quebec, we need you in Ontario, we need you in the Atlantic provinces. I really appreciate that, but you don't need me. What you need is to use your voice. What you need is to talk to your friends and neighbors and stand up and make some noise in your own provinces. You don't need me to do that. I'm sure there's someone out there who is more than happy to get loud. And yeah, seek those people out. Get together. Make a plan. Look at your governing party's bylaws and policies in your own provinces and find a way to send a message to them that says, if you're not going to represent us, we're going to fire you too, just like Alberta's going to do. So we wish you the very best of luck, and hopefully I'll be able to come out and visit some of the other provinces this year. If not, I'm sure you guys can handle this stuff on your own. Anyway, have a great night, everybody.